Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan from the Post-Dispatch is here. Welcome, Pat.
I can't.
And Jim Schrader from the Telegraph is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, guys.
Jim, Fairmount Park is pushing for legislation that would allow slot machines at the track. Park President Brian Zander says it's becoming difficult to compete with tracks in other states because they're offering bigger purses. Is this going to be the year that we see slot machines at the horse racing tracks in Illinois?
I think it should be the year. Didn't we just start this discussion about 3 years ago in this program? And and we talk about it every year. As I've said on this show many times before, I don't understand why the state, in their infinite wisdom, is not smart enough to go ahead and put slot machines or video gaming at a facility that already has state agents from the Gaming Commission on site. They're already there that can easily, watch over the machines and watch for problems. Instead, we decide to license every little social club, billiard hall, bar, restaurant in the state and license them with video machines while they continue to try to block the the tracks in the state. The first full month of operation for many machines in the state of Illinois, the casinos in Illinois felt a drop in revenue. Could it be contributory that the machines go online and all of a sudden people don't have to go to the casino anymore to lose money? They can go down to Tony's bar down on the corner and still put the same $20 bill or $50 or $100 into a machine, and they don't have to go to the casino. Well, that ship has sailed. We're getting more and more of those machines online every day in all these little bars and restaurants. There are several in our area. Some areas continue to fight those. I still think that it would be a great idea to go ahead and put them in the tracks that I think could contribute to increased earnings, certainly for the track, because it gives the gamblers something to do in that 19 minutes between races. They can at least put a few more bucks in the machines. As I said, the Gaming Commission is already there on site. This passed last year, I guess, and Quinn used the line item veto and wiped it out, said there wasn't sufficient ethics legislation in the bill to protect. I think it should have happened. I think it should have happened 4 years ago and 3 years ago and 2 years ago, and maybe this will be the year. And the state of Illinois will have these track/casinos, like many of the surrounding states already have.
Pat, Fairmount Park is pushing for slot machines again. Is this going to be the year that the horse tracks finally get slot machines?
Before we had gambling in taverns, before we had casinos, before we had the state lottery, we had the racetracks, Fairmount Park and Coquia Downs in southern Illinois. They've been there a long time. They've served an audience. They provide jobs not just in food service and in card dealing and maintaining slot machines. They've got horse trainers and groomers and breeders. There's a whole cottage industry built around horse racing that's quaint, that's sportsmanlike. The betting on a horse race is very different from a lot of the casino betting. You don't have a pure game of chance at all. You've got people who handicap the horses, who attempt to determine from past performances how a horse might run. It's a challenge to the gambler in a whole different way from what occurs at a casino. Now, I would think the state would be eager to embrace the additional revenue that would come with having slot machines in a building full of people with the propensity to gamble between the horse races they're allowed to gamble on. It just makes good sense. They're not providing, if the idea is to provide revenue to the state, and of course it is, a gambler standing idle at Fairmount Park isn't putting money in the state treasury. A gambler putting money in a slot machine at Fairmount Park is. So what's behind this? Is there that much political pressure coming from the casinos to avoid having that kind of competition? And if not, as Jim raises the question, why was that pressure not brought stronger to bear against the expansion of the video poker into taverns. I don't quite understand that. Fairmount Park had a little less than $70 million wagered last year. That makes it just about on par with the smallest of the casinos, the Argosy and Alton, which had about the same amount wagered. It's about half as much as the Casino Queen. It's about a sixth as much as the biggest of the casinos, the Rivers Casino in Des Plaines. So it's a little player among these places. Would it take some business away from Argosy and the Casino Queen? Maybe. But it was here first. It supports a wider array of jobs. And what Brian Zander, the president of the track, says is based in very good logic. Right now, if I own a horse and run him at Fairmount Park and I win $5,000, I look at that and I say, for not a whole lot more cost, I can haul a horse to a track in Indiana and maybe make $15,000 or $20,000 if we win the race. The economics are just not there. There's not enough money flowing through the place to support the level of purses that will support the level of horses that run there. So I know Fairmount's been crying that it's on its been on its deathbed for years, but I think that's probably true, and I think there needs to be a better accounting to the public and the constituents of Fairmount Park why something so logical is not being allowed to happen when the gambling is pervasive everywhere else in the state.
It would have seemed to me that it would have made much more sense to allow gambling at the casinos, which would be 7 in the state, or at the tracks. There are 7.
I don't think there are that many.
May not be 7.
I think there are like
maybe
3
4 or 5.
or 4, yeah.
But that would have had a lot less impact on these casinos than every bar and grill in the state, potentially, or gas station, or anybody that has more than 5 parking spots being able to put a gambling machine in. I do know the casinos fought the gaming in these clubs and bars. Didn't do them any good. But exactly what happened is what they predicted, was all this is going to do is divert revenue away from the casinos into these bars and restaurants and gas stations. And it has done exactly that. It still would have made more sense to me to keep it in a finite number of locations in the tracks rather than licensing these all over the state.
I think part of what happened with the bars was that the law recognized that a lot of them had illegal machines anyway, so why can't the state get a piece of it? People are going to gamble there anyway, the state takes a piece. But of course you can argue the same thing with the tracks. The gamblers are already there, why not add to their enjoyment and take a piece of it?
And I'll bet if you check some of those bars and some of those social clubs, they still have the illegal machines, because in the illegal machines they keep 100% of the profits. With the state licensed machines, they pay a lot of upfront money to license them with the state, and they give most of the money back.
We need to take a break. We have more Metro Talk right after this.
I decided to come to Lewis and Clark because it was close to home, inexpensive. I wanted to become a computer graphic designer, also become an animator as well. Hopefully with this degree, I could break into the video game industry or the film industry. Affordable, close to home, cutting edge technology. Lewis and Clark.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. I'll teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
Lead paint poisoning affects 1 million children today. If you're pregnant or have young children and your home was built before 1978, you could be at risk. Learn how to protect your family. To find your home's danger zones, the health effects, or just to find help, log on to leadfreekids.org.
can't be happening. This can't be happening.
Of course it's not happening. Armored car. Listen, having money isn't about luck. Make your own coffee, save $1,000 a year. Feed me.
Feed the pig.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffel. Jim Schrader and Pat Gowan are here. Pat, we were talking about horse racing in the first segment. Let's move on to the lottery. The private operator of the lottery is facing a $20 million penalty because the state says it came up nearly $66 million short in the profits that were promised to the state. However, North Star Lottery Group, the group that's running the Illinois lottery now, says, we haven't seen those numbers. We're not sure what the state's talking about. Are you surprised by the opinion that North Star has come up short?
Well, I'm not surprised that they promised that they could take. I'm looking here to see where I'd written down. The state made $573 million in lottery proceeds the last year that the state had it. And North Star promised, depending upon whose numbers you take, about $823 million, and they fell about $66 million short of that. That $66 million, by the way, is just a little less than what is bad at Fairmount Park or is bad at the Argosy Casino, to put that in some perspective. I mean, these numbers, even what they sold is like the biggest casino in Illinois, paired up with the second biggest casino in Illinois handle. The lottery is immense. And I think there's a contradiction between this and the last thing we just discussed. I mean, at Fairmount Park, the governor and some leaders in the legislature are very worried about expanding gambling, and will it be, too much of a social burden and things like that. And yet, the lottery is so important to the revenue of the state, they're cracking a whip over the private company to say, get more people to gamble, get more people to gamble. If gambling is bad for society, and I think it is to a degree, all things in moderation maybe, though this isn't moderation, this is whipping the horses to go faster. I don't know how much gambling money Illinois thinks it can wring out of the people, but it makes the Fairmount stance, to me, all the sillier. You've got known gamblers there who you could get more out of without resorting to this. I guess we're going to see more promotion for the Illinois Lottery. I don't know what's going to have to happen for North Star to meet its targets. And I don't know how much money is in it for North Star. A $20 million fine, I guess that's a lot of money for them. I don't know what percentage, maybe Jim does, that they're getting of that take. They're going to dispute that. They'll probably try to negotiate it down. They'll pay some kind of penalty. I presume that they will revise the promises. But to expect that kind of leap in lottery sales. And the lottery, we know, tends to fall on people of more modest means. I mean, people who can't afford to go to the casino, who can't afford to go to the racetrack, will still buy a lottery ticket. They're the classic people who were the customers for the numbers racket in the mob days, and the lottery is just a state-sanctioned numbers racket. It operates the same way, except it takes more money away from the winnings than the mob did. Your odds were better to get your money back when the mob ran it. But it's kind of disappointing to see that we are so desperate for money, for cash, that we're trying to squeeze more money out of people who in many cases cannot afford it.
Jim, are you surprised by the state's opinion that North Star Lottery fell short in what it was going to do for the Illinois Lottery?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that the state also is not willing to show the audit of those numbers to North Star. That would be my problem if I was North Star, that you're trusting the guy on the other side to say, oh, no, I've double-checked my numbers. You owe me another $20 million. Well, show me the number. No, I ran the numbers. You owe me another $20 million. If it's not built into the contract, then shame on North Star. And, kudos to the state, because they were smart enough to know that they can finagle numbers. Isn't this the state that doesn't pay their bills on time? Do we trust anything the state tells us? Do you? I don't. I can tell you the hospitals in this area don't believe the state when they say they're going to get their money in 180 days, because it might be 207 days if they're lucky. If I was North Star, I'd say, okay, we may owe you the $20 million, but show me the numbers, show me how the math on how you got to that number. Maybe North Star overpromised, and if they did, then maybe they need to pony up the $20 million. As Pat pointed out, they did about 600. The state, when it was state operated by state government employees, did $593 million the last full year, and they did 770. So doing rough numbers, about a 60% increase or so, 50 plus increase. So maybe North Star really does owe the money. I'd want to see an audit of the money. I'd want to see exactly how the state got their numbers. And if North Star overpromised, well then shame on them. Maybe they need to pay the penalty. What scares me on this, though, there is also, as Pat pointed out, is there has to be a bottom to this bucket of monies that people are willing to lose. Some point in time, I think we're going to scrape the bottom of that bucket. I think there's a growth clause in North Star's contract that they were going to do roughly $800 million the first year, and it's supposed to go up from that. If they can't hit their first year number, it would make me a little shaky on the math on how it's going to go from henceforward. But I guess the state looks at it as we got our share, plus we're going to get a $20 million penalty on top of it. It's still more money than we ever made before.
And understand that their promise would be the equivalent of about 2 tickets a week for every adult in the state. That's pretty good saturation.
That's very good saturation. We need to take another break. We'll have more after this.
I chose Lewis and Clark Community College because my dentist and my dental hygienist both highly recommended this school for the dental assisting program and dental hygiene program. And I feel completely prepared after going to just a couple semesters here. I feel like I know what I'm doing now. These great teachers, I feel like I can have one-on-one chances with them. So I feel completely prepared thanks to this college. Highly recommended, fantastic atmosphere, and great teachers. Lewis and Clark.
Oh, sweetheart. Gonna give you a hand?
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty. Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
This is Metro Talk. Jim Schrader and Pat Gowan are here. I'm Kent Scheffel. Jim, the St. Louis Business Journal has polled its readers on the top priority for Mayor Francis Slay's next term. Obviously, the assumption here is since he won the primary, he's going to win the general election. Bottom line is their readers, 40% said a merger with St. Louis County was the most important item to deal with. 27% said school improvement. 20% said advancement of the North Side Regeneration Project. Do you agree with the poll?
Well, not being a resident of the city of St. Louis, nor working there as Pat does, I guess I'm going to have to base my answer on what I see in the Post-Dispatch or on the nightly news. And it would seem to me that the biggest problem the city of St. Louis faces is crime. And that, to me, would have to be my first priority. And maybe a function of these other things would create more money to put more police officers on the street and to have, some other programs there. But when you're running, as much crime as I see broadcast on the St. Louis TV stations or read about in the Post or read about online, when you're having a murder or two a week, sometimes more, it seems to be heavily dominated by unfortunately, young black males being killed, not always, but many times. To me, that would seem to be the first priority. How you wrap your arms around that, I'm not sure. Maybe a merger with St. Louis County would create some additional taxing revenue for the city of St. Louis, and possibly then they could add to those law enforcement ranks. They have now control their own police department for the first time since the Civil War, but they still have all of the taxing obligations that go with that to put that many officers on the street. But it seems to me, if I was Mayor Slay, that's what I'd be talking about, is the crime on the streets, and hopefully some type of plan to deal with it.
Pat, St. Louis Business Journal has conducted a poll on the most important thing for Mayor Slay to tackle during his next term. 40% said merge with St. Louis County, 27% said school improvement, 20% said the advancement of the North Side project. Do you agree?
The poll was of less than 0.2% of the population of the city of St. Louis. So there's no, and even by its publisher's own admission, there's no science whatsoever behind this. By the way, I think St. Louis is, speaking as the crime editor of the big city paper in St. Louis, the perception of crime is terrible. Crime, for the most part, is down in almost all categories. Last year, St. Louis had 131 homicides. That's a lot of murders, to say that size. On the other hand, the number of people arrested for murder who had felony records was about 3/4. The number of people who were murdered who had felony records was also about 3/4, about 76% of everyone murdered in St. Louis last year had a felony record. Now, that doesn't mean they deserved it, and I'm not saying they did, but I'm saying that an honest person who lives life reasonably in St. Louis probably doesn't have very much more to fear, if anything more to fear, than just living in the streets of Alton or Collinsville or a lot of the Metro East communities that are here. It's not that dangerous if you're not out night clubbing at 3 o'clock in the morning or trying to buy drugs in a bad neighborhood of the city. A lot of people live there peacefully and never have a problem in their whole lives. I work with a fair number of them. So I think the crime perception is terrible, and maybe they ought to invest in that. The thing to me, I'm with the 27% on education, and I offer as evidence of that a story we had the other day about an outfit called the City Garden Montessori School, and it's down by the Botanical Garden. And it is a multicultural school that dedicates itself to attracting not particularly the rich people and not particularly the poor people, though it has some of those extremes, but just a lot of ordinary people. And it is creating a significant growth in that neighborhood. People are leaving St. Louis County to move back into the city for the same reason many people left it in the first place, and that was education, because this school is so successful and doing so well, they want their kids to be a part of it. And it's provided a bright spot in city living, because everybody knows, and at the newspaper, I've worked among young family people for years, everybody knows if you're going to live in the city of St. Louis, you can get a nice house for less money than in the county, but you're going to pay the difference in sending your kids to private school, because nobody with any sense, their term, not mine, but anybody with any sense doesn't send their kids to public school. And a resurgence, and the Montessori is not a public school, it's a charter school. That the city schools have dabbled in charter schools as well. But it's evidence that with the right educational system, you can get people to come back into the city, and that's what it desperately needs. The Northside Regeneration Project is great, fighting crime is great. I think merging with the county would make a whole lot of sense in my mind as an outsider, but my view of it is it probably makes more sense for the county than it does for the city in some ways. And by the way, you want to see why they'll never merge, consider this. The average city resident serves jury service about once every 2.5 to 3 years. The average county resident serves jury service about once every 19 years. That alone is enough to keep people from wanting to merge the two if you happen to live in the county. But
we need to backtrack a little bit there, because you've taken an approach most people never say. Usually it's the talk of the city merging with the county, and you're saying vice versa. The county should merge with the city.
Well, the logical thing, I mean, if the city became a part of the county government, I don't think much would change. If it just became a part of the county, like Alton is a part of Madison County or Collinsville is a part of Madison County, I don't know that would make very much difference. One of the great impediments for getting anything done in St. Louis County is it's got 90 municipalities. It's got like 60 police departments. It's got like 40 fire departments. The fragmentation, the overlapping costs are enormous. It has a high number of those police departments that aren't competent to write a parking ticket. And everybody knows it, and we write about it. And making some of those inefficiencies and making that go away would help. I think the St. Louis region would be served if St. Louis were the big kahuna in town. Whether you live in Chicago, if you live in the Chicago area, Chicago is the big player in the region, and everybody knows it, and it carries a lot of clout. The same with Los Angeles. A lot of people in the Los Angeles area don't live in the city, but the city's huge and it's a big kahuna. In St. Louis, you've got an eighth or less of the population of metropolitan St. Louis lives in the city limits of St. Louis. It's the big deal because it's centrally located, it's where the sports teams are, it's where you go to the Fox or go to the concert at Scottrade. But except for that, it is not the huge player. And I think a merger would return it to that kind of stature nationally and regionally, and I think would probably be good for the region. But you've got 90 fiefdoms in St. Louis County that don't want anything to do with it because they've got their own mayor and their own chief of police and their own ways of doing things. And I don't know if it's something that could ever be overcome, but I think it would be, again, maybe more beneficial to the county than the city if they were merged together to be the city.
Jim, a drastic change here. Representative Louise Arroyo of Chicago has introduced legislation to ban the sale of lion meat in Illinois. Does the state need a ban on selling lion meat?
Well, the last time I went to Lion's Choice, no, I can't say that I've ever heard of a restaurant or anybody else having that on the menu. I don't know exactly the thought process behind it, but maybe there is an underground movement that I'm not aware of. Certainly I've heard of some of the laws now that environmentalists deal with shark fins. The harvesting of shark fins for shark fin soup, which is a delicacy in the Orient, and apparently that has been a problem. I don't know that there's this type of a movement here for lions. I don't know exactly the thought process behind it, but if it's out front in something that may become a problem later, whatever. Okay, get it on the record or get it on the books now and not have to deal with it later. I just don't know that it's a widespread problem.
Pat, do we need a ban on the sale of lion meat in Illinois?
It's a classic case of the government meddling into things people can take care of for themselves. When I was a child and first went to the zoo, I made a deal. I looked a lion in the eye and said, look, I don't eat you, you don't eat me. And to this point, we've both kept our promises.
That's going to do it for this round of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of The Telegraph, has been here, along with Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch. I'm Kent Scheffel. We'll see you next time.